advice, sports, and more. Ropeman holds a degree in journalism with a research specialty in American Indian media from Georgia State University. She is currently based in Atlanta, Georgia. So that's a little introduction of our presenter here this afternoon for you guys. So I don't know if you guys are ready. We could probably just get started with who's here. Okay. Countdown. 59, 58. We don't want to get into my jokes. They're not gorgeous. And she is up to questions later on, so we'll try to get some timing to ask questions that she may have answers for. So once again, her name is Sheena Ropeman. She's based out of Atlanta, Georgia. She is presenting on decolonized journalism, shifting away from a colonial narrative. Sounds interesting. I like to sit here for this one. And again, reminder throughout today and tomorrow, we have a lot of stuff going on. Film screening again this evening, 6:30 for showing, 9 o'clock p.m. over east of here at the Journey Museum. Surveys on the tables. Again, please fill those out. Meet and greet. We have a meet and greet banner right outside of the east corner. For those of you that are wanting to meet some of our performers this evening and tomorrow. And then just our sponsors, Native Americans in Philanthropy, Indian Collective, NAJA, which Native American Journalists Association, and Indian Country Today. So please welcome up Sheena Ropeman.
Thank you. A little relieved. They said I was going to be in the ballroom, and I thought it was going to be like 300 people. I'm a little relieved. I'm a little nervous. Normally, I talk to high school or college journalism students, so talking to my peers is a little nerve-wracking. And the only person I know here is presenting at the same time. It's so beautiful. So bear with me. So we're going to talk about decolonizing journalism and shifting away from colonial narratives. Already got introduced, but there's me. I went to school at Georgia State University for journalism. My research specialty for my senior thesis in American Indian media. Currently based in Atlanta, Georgia, but I did grow up in Lusk, Wyoming, which is like 3 or 4 hours southwest of here. So it feels really good to be home. I haven't been back here since 2016, and I admit I kind of teared up when I got off the plane. It feels really good to be back here. All right, so we're just gonna jump right in here. Who knows what this is? Yeah, I just see nods. Yeah. So this was CNN reporting during the 2020 election on exit polls, and I don't know if you see what I see, but we've got a couple different groups identified here, and then we have something else. Yeah. NAJA did call for an apology. CNN has yet to apologize. But I will say they have a new CEO who asked for a meeting. I will see. Fingers crossed. Again, I'm from Atlanta, so most of my time work at CNN. I would really love to be able to work with them, but they have some work to do. But this is a great example of the problem we're tackling, right? Just erasure. We're not even identified here. So quick trigger warning for the next slide. There's some examples of erasure and how this again. I'm sure you all know what to expect here. And here we go. We can laugh at these. Now, again, I'm from Atlanta, so last year during the World Series was a lot of fun for me. And then, yeah, my cat right here. That's fun. But this is just an example of how pervasive this stuff is, right? These narratives just seep into the cultural zeitgeist. And, then we get cats living in TVs and we don't even live anymore. It's just all over. I've been practicing all morning in the room upstairs. But the problem with this isn't just that it's misrepresentation. This might sound a little over dramatic, maybe hopefully not. But these colonial narratives that we're talking about are literally tools as defined by the United Nations. This is just Marty Two Bowls did this cartoon for ICT, formerly the New Country. That's a great example. We'll further on in the presentation, we'll talk about the bingo reference, not to put together a bingo card, a stereotype in media, but New York Times has built a card and started to create their own card. And if anyone would like, we did print stickers, and I have a whole stack of stickers of this cartoon down here in front if you want them. They're good conversation with learners for sure. But again, this is poverty porn, right? You've all heard that term. These narratives contribute to the erasure of Indigenous people, which then there's been multiple studies, but the one I always use in 2005, the American Psychological Association study on mascots. They called, in 2005, called for the immediate retirement of all Indigenous themed mascots in sports because there would be direct correlation and causation cited between mascots and injuries like this stuff to suicide in Indian direct correlation. There's been plenty of others I'm happy to list you up if you would like some of those reports, but this stuff literally causes harm, physical harm. And it starts by erasing identity. If where I come from is made fun of by this guy at the Cleveland World Series years back, or our president at the time, characteristically participating in the Tomahawk Cup, they're making fun of me, right? So what, obviously contributes to depression, mental illness, anxiety, feelings of hopelessness, purposelessness. We all know. And Aaron Huey, some of you guys might know him, he's a photographer. He's a great photographer. Some of it's kind of problematic, but he has been willing to engage in conversation with me in the past. So he's an alright guy. But I do really like this quote from him. He did a TED Talk. And he says, the last chapter in any successful genocide is the one in which the oppressor can remove their hands and say, my God, what are these people doing to themselves? They're killing each other. They're killing themselves while we watch them. And again, it's problematic there and can be sometimes. I think this is a really good quote to illustrate how cyclical and pervasive these are. The colonialist government can take their hands away and say, they're doing it to themselves. So where do we stand? We know diversity in the media is a problem. We know diversity in newsrooms is a problem. These stats I pulled up in 2016. They're from a 2015 study from Klinger and the American. Um, you know, and weaker countries been a little distracted since. But so for every 100 people, there are 0.4 Native American people in the newspaper industry. That's not newsroom, that's the industry. And gender, 0.1 female, 0.2 male. Compared to everybody else, it's pretty sobering statistics. So how did I get this far? Shit ain't great for newsrooms to begin with, right? Like, we don't have any money. You can see the drop during the 2007, 2008 financial crisis. It just literally went downhill. And I'm gonna kind of get on my not just soapbox here for a moment. It really does all come down to money. We have got to get Indigenous journalists to newsrooms. Most of us can't afford to take on paid internships, which is how you get in these big New York Times and Wall Street Journal. That's how you get Americans taking them off paid for, underpaid for it. We can afford to do that, we shouldn't have to go. I became education manager at Naja a year ago. It is my literal dream job because I went through this in 2007 and 2008. I had been nanny for about 10 years and just freelance on the side because I couldn't take on paid internships. I couldn't take underpaid work. So I had to make it work. And so now I get to turn around and give scholarships and internships and fellowships to Indigenous journalists and students. And we put people in newsrooms. We have put these kids in newsrooms. We are slowly but surely making a change. But it's because we support them financially and, of course, mentally and emotionally. But you gotta put your money in. Yeah, money where so, if you're not Indigenous, what can you do? We're all reporters. If you're trying to tell these stories, what can you do to help not perpetuate these things? The number one thing that I see is folks not understanding sovereignty. We Indigenous people do not just exist in geographic space. We're not, there's the 500 or so federally recognized tribes that either state recognized, there's a ton of tribes, especially down south, that aren't recognized at all because they were mixed with enslaved people, those populations, that kind of thing. It's so much more, right, than just the reservation. There's, the urban Indians. There's just so much more, and I think I'm preaching to the choir here. I don't think you would encourage you to already understand these things, but it's not just one language, it's not just one culture, all that. We exist outside of the colonialist definition. We were here first. We were here before there were borders, we were here before there was blood pumping bullshit, all this stuff. We're sovereign. We exist outside. That's the number one thing that I see mainstream journalists not getting. A lot of that is, to the next point, you need to get out there. I tell my college students this all the time, but you can't just send an email or pick up the phone. You need to get off your ass and go walk over to the office or whatever you're reporting on. And the same idea goes in this context. You need to surround yourself with Indigenous people. And I know that's not always possible. We already talked about how poor newsrooms are, and we can't always afford to get, somewhere where you need to be. But that kind of leads us to the next point is it's not just journalism. It's not just news media. There's shows now like Reservation Dogs and Training. Well, watched it. It's fantastic. But like, if you're white, why haven't if you haven't watched that yet? Like, why not? It's a great show, even outside of being some American Indian narrative. It's just a good show, and that's what I'm talking about. Is mainstream stuff. It's not just me. Earlier today, NASA put an Indigenous woman in space. Did you know that? There's an Indigenous woman in space. You should know that. You should know. I should know that. We don't just exist, it's that on the reservation or in these little balls that people live. So here's our bingo. This is one of the many resources. I hope you guys can read that. It's a little blurry, but this is one of the many resources. We've got a ton of stuff both for Indigenous reporters and non-Indigenous. This is the one where he said the New York Times has filled up this entire card and started their own special things. Second card. I don't want to win bingo on this card, okay? If you're writing a story on Indigenous populations or issues, then your bingo, you might want to. Yeah. This is my favorite resource. I especially like the horses. But yeah, so that's bingo. And then we've got, yeah, so this is Naja's website. Under the resources tab, we've got recruiting guides for Bala, Ikwa, there's Gapple stuff if you're trying to find an Indigenous expert. We're working on translating some of these into different Indigenous languages. If anyone speaks one, that AP file, that I insert, which I think this is going to be included in the actual book. This here, do we have an AP person? Oh, I thought.
We have fluent speakers over there.
Oh, yeah, we'll pay you, for real. Yeah, we pay good, too. Yeah, I know at least one of the languages. We've got Cree and Ojibwe coming up. I think one other one that I would like to have some stuff in Lakota. We're also working on putting together like a font pack for different languages. So if you have any resources there, let me know. But yeah, we've got free press stuff for tribal media. That's a whole other topic. We're just all sorts of stuff, and it's for both Indigenous reporters and non. And you can join whether you're, this isn't a pitch from me on this, but you can join whether you're Indigenous or not, that's fine. But I would just, I start with Naja and I keep going if you need help. And I think talking about but I wanted to open up the rest for question, conversation. Anything? I've got those stickers and business cards down here. And yeah. You can, it's free, so you can just pull it up and print it. Yeah. Yeah, I think everything on here. I think the AP inserts might cost a few dollars, but my boss is probably watching. Thinking about the first time. So here's my Naja contact. Again, I've got business cards, and then here's my personal contacts if you want to check them out. Yeah.
Do you speak Lakota?
A little bit, not much. I tell people I have like a 2-year-old vocabulary. I can count sometimes. Do you? You want to translate some stuff for us? Yeah, all right. I'll look you up later. Yeah. Yeah, so that's a good point. Definitely, when I was talking about like immersing yourself, again, I don't mean like move to the reservation or anything, but yeah, like read indigenous media, right? Every day, whether you're reporting on it or not. I would definitely say, again, I'm really biased because I work at Honda, but Graham Brewer, he's at NBC, and a lot of this is on our. He is our vice president. He's fantastic. Tristan Rockholm, I think probably everyone knows, but Tristan's fantastic. I'd say definitely follow Holly Maycloth and Jordan Bennerby. Jordan is the managing editor at ICT. Where's Indigenous? Yeah, go ahead.
So in thinking about shifting the narrative, do you use, I guess, people if something is not?
Yeah, it's hard, right? Especially if you're in a mainstream news. Yeah, I think it's again. I normally talk to college students who are a little less ballsy, for lack of a better term. I think there's a way to speak up without being. I would say aggressive, but yeah, radical works too. And we know too, like there's those stereotypes of like, oh, brown woman, they're immediately aggressive. Like, why are you so angry? So that's hard, and we all know HR is nervous. But sorry. No, sorry. Well, you're my friend. We're good. We're cool. Yeah, I think you do. And one thing I tell my students too is, basically you gotta have your fun off fun, right? Be ready to leave if there's a line that's being crossed in this. So I think there's ways to do it. I was on a board a couple years ago that they didn't mean anything by it. It wasn't malicious. You didn't even think of it. And again, that goes back to how pervasive this stuff is. They're like, yeah, we have power. I was like, no, we don't. And oh shit, yeah. You know, I think you just. I use humor to deflect a lot, so I think there's ways to do it. But I think you also have to be ready to talk because your mental health. And there are pieces that will take you, not that will help. You can job if you want, you know. We'll figure it out, but you gotta do it. We don't as an organization, but all of our board members are working journalists. And we've had issues where like there's been editors that are doing stuff and our members will be like, hey, like, can you sit down with the editor and help? We'll definitely have those conversations with authorization training for mainstream newsrooms. We've done a lot with HR recently. And those are fun to sit in on for me too. It's just one of those things. We're always going to be having these conversations. So yeah, as an organization, we don't. But we will, you know, like with the CNN thing, we will release statements and probably all your apologies. We got rid of the fires from CNN. So, intimidating microphone. Anything else?
I have one more question.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so we have MMIW here.
Mm-hmm.
That whole get shield case, it went from like 0 to 100.
Yeah.
Then all the media outlets stopped.
Yeah, that's a great example.
It was nationwide, right?
Yeah.
there something, or that investigative journalism that does that, where they will twist the agenda?
I think it's another issue that's got so many different layers. We know that that case is going to get more eyes on it from the get-go, because she's young, white, and black. Yeah, that's a good one. And what do, right? You don't want to sound like you're dismissing this girl who lost her life horribly. No one's arguing that. But when you say, hey, what about all these other women that have disappeared? You don't even know their names. Yeah, it's like this huge mushroom cloud. It's just so overwhelming. And I think media, especially like breaking news, media feeds off itself. It's this beast that can't stop. So they see like, oh, they did that. Oh yeah, they got good advertising dollars out of that, right? So let's keep picking it up and picking it up. And then it does become an investigation, and the first person to break the story, gets their Pulitzer. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to tell you, keep your head down and keep doing the hard work, because that's exhausting. I don't know what else to say, if I'm being honest. Yeah, it's just a frustrating situation. It's frustrating for all of us. But yeah.
What is the story that's better equipped for you? What is the story that's
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, what would your advice?
That's a really good question. I think, where are the lines, right? Like, where are the boundaries? I think stories like Nicole, who went to space today. I'm a big space nerd, so I'm really excited about that. But I think doing like a profile of her and helping amplify this really cool story, I think that anyone could do, right? But when you start getting into missing and murdered Indigenous women, people, when you start getting into the thick of like these Supreme Court cases, like Lakota, I think that's where this is just my personal opinion, but I think that's where you need to pass that story on to an Indigenous person, because there's context, like going back to that sovereignty point, there's context and just like an understanding of existence that, we just have outside of, I knew that was coming. Outside of the mainstream understanding of what's going on. And there's also a lot of folks, Indigenous journalists, like with stuff like ICWA, Indian Child Welfare Act. We see how it's actually shaking out, because we're on the inside. So I think something to amplify positive stories. They're just cool stuff, right? Like, there's just so much cool stuff going on in Indian country that you could do profiles or stories on. But when you're getting into like the nitty-gritty stuff, I think that's better. Okay, just my personal opinion. Feel free to ask me. Yeah. I think, like I mentioned, Saja does the newsroom training. Let me pull up. This is a really good resource. It's Illuminative. And they tackle, we just do media, but Illuminative kind of tackles the full thing. Changes the narrative. There you go. They're a really good place to start. And I know this is super millennial of me, but there's a lot of really good Instagram accounts that'll just, they're just posting memes and stuff, but sometimes taking it in that bite-sized, cute little, illustration is the easiest way to digest it. I would definitely start here. These guys are great, and again, they tackle a lot more outside the scope of just news media.
I have a suggestion.
Yes, please. Yes, someone else, please.
One, there's a good book called In the Course of the Conqueror, and it outlines a lot of really important Supreme Court cases that have impacted provinces. So that is a good resource, but also our tribal colleges and universities have a lot of classes in history, provinces, like provinces and social provinces, and all the language program at the all of the college. You can take a class on top of it, and it's exactly on the topic. So I think using tribal colleges as a resource is also.
That's a great idea. I love that you can take it online and audit. I might have to look into that. Yep, there we go.
So there is a difference between changing narrative and about journalism and talking about genocide and suppression of narrative. And for instance, you could talk over one about all of the really big issues that impact us, but we don't have very many outlets to get that out, and especially if you want to come around and be a culture of these people. And then we got one radio station that was full, not running. Natives were interested in educating our own people rather than doing commercial ventures. We usually only have one or two people that make a decision on what's going to go out there. And to us, if the most part of the profession is, well, we'll talk about it, but we're not going to get down to the truth about it.
Yeah.
So, what's I guess the goal in terms of getting more outlets with that, as opposed to more journalists who are trying to change the narrative.
Right. No, that's a great point. Yeah, because it does feel like that. Especially going back to we're journalists, we don't make a lot of money, and a lot of kind of freelancing and just kind of scrambling and grasping at putting a story out there. But that's a great point. Is more tribal media. It sounds like is what you're essentially asking. Yeah, I think that's the beauty of the internet, right? There's a lot of problems with the internet, and we've seen in the past few years, but I think that's where Twitter really came in handy during like the Idle No More, that kind of stuff. And again, I'm gonna go back to training students in journalism, training them how to participate in journalism ethically, so that if they want to start a blog, or if they want to be reporters on Twitter, that's fine too. But just pushing it. I think it's definitely we want high quality, but quantity. And again, money comes down to money. It costs money to print a newspaper, trust me. Then you run into the problem with advertising. You don't want to place ads for people you might not necessarily agree with. There's. I think it's a problem in media in general, that it becomes even more stark when you get down to like a tribal media level. And I don't have the answer, but that's where I'm headed. And just keep pushing. Anything else? We've got like 15 minutes left.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The guy that you talked about being fired,
Oh, that's Rick Santorum. He had run for president in 2016. And then for some reason CNN hired him as a political commentator. And what was it that he said something, he said a few different things, but as he's sitting there talking, he said somehow American Indians got brought up, and he was like, yeah, but like, where are they? Like, I don't know where they are. Where are they? Kind of like that. And Naja, find the release, but we definitely called for, and that was, again, CNN called for an apology and eventually they let me go. I might be able to find these who or something. Yeah, here we go, this guy. Oh yeah. Yes, we have Native Americans, but candidly, there isn't much Native American culture in American culture, is what he said. Yeah, he wasn't very popular.
I work with, students that, what is the avenue of
Yeah, are they high school, college? Okay, awesome. I love to hear that. University of Kansas. Just this last summer, we with NAJA started high school journalism camp. Week long, it's free. And I think this year we're going to try and get more funding to help with travel. I want to say we had 9 students this year, and only 2 of them were actually came because they were interested in journalism. The rest of them, I keep making this joke, but I'm pretty sure Grandma and Grandpa just sent them to a camp for a week so it was free. But they all had a lot of fun. But we took them. Again, it's at University of Kansas, so we took them over to Haskell for a day. They got to do some reporting. They did. I'm a print journalist, so I don't know all the fancy terms for the live shots, and I think they put together a podcast. But just getting them used to the equipment and having to go up to people and ask questions, that it was so much fun. We're doing it again next year. We already have the dates, which I can give you later. But that I would start there. And then, again, it's University of Kansas. We can talk later. I can give you all the information, but start there. And we actually had a meeting about this last night, but we're going to, hopefully in the next year or two, I'm not just going to launch a mentorship program, one-on-one for students, because we know we also have a lot of journalism students that go make, like I did. I went to Georgia State University. Me and my sister were the only 2 indigenous people there that I knew. So we're going to try a program like that to kind of help pull some more folks in to the journalism. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, along those lines, if you work in education or work with students or in journalism education, please get in touch with me. I'm probably trying to do too much, but trying to start up all these college chapters and work with more high school students and even maybe one day some middle school. So, okay, I think that's about it. And again, grab some stickers. Otherwise, I'll have to ship them back to Oklahoma.
Can you set them on the registration sheet?
Yeah, please do. Yeah, that'd be great.
The youth will be back in the morning.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm a sticker person.
If there's anybody that hasn't signed up for the film studio registration, please do so now. Stop registration. For those of you that did, you should have received your invitation on.
Well, I get that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just sent out a survey and
How about another round of applause here for Sheena?
Great things. What I really love about everything here today and everything that's going to take place tomorrow is about changing our narratives. And a lot of times we are, and we all know this, I'm not trying to preach to the choir, but we are misrepresented all the time. And what's kind of funny about one of those slides, and I know all of you in here we're probably laughing at that too. When that whole thing that CNN came out, something else, I think like the very next day, we were all wearing t-shirts with it.
Yeah.
Right, just said something else, right? And that's a survival tactic that our people have, where we can take something and make it humorous, but yet still bring attention to it at the same time. So again, a round of applause for Sheena. We're very grateful for all of your information, and thank you very, very much. Friends and relatives, we have about 10 minutes until our next presenter, so feel free to mosey around, grab some coffee, maybe some juice, some water. There's some cookies out there. There's some pretzels out there. Make sure we check out the vendors. And about 3:30, we're going to get rocking and rolling again with Mr. Kyle White, about 3:30. And again, we want to remind everybody about the screening tonight. I believe, where's that going to be? At the Journey Museum, yes, tonight at 6:30 and 9:30. So again, there are limited seats for that. So if you would like to sign up to go to that screening, please sign up out here, and there are limited seats. And again, this evening about 5 o'clock, after Mr. Kyle White finishes, about 5 p.m., they're going to be serving dinner, so we want everyone to hang around, tell your friends, your relatives, get on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever you got to do, and invite your relatives on over here to have a meal, and we will have some live performances and some fun stuff this evening. So again, may taco ya vivo about 3:30 when it comes down. Volunteer. As you volunteer, yeah, there we go. Hey, get back over here. We need one more. We need one more up here. How about the women? We need one more. Come on, Chance. Oh, Lakota. Okay, looks like we're ready to go. We want all 5 of you to line up right here. Just line up. We're going to play telephone. Yeah, remember that game? Right here, line on up. I can't tell you what we're going to do yet. Hey, you guys might want to get your live feed ready. I mean on your phones, on your personal phones, you might want to get your live feeds ready. Now, is there prizes?
Yeah.
Okay, there is a prize, one prize for the ladies, and one prize for the fellas. You have now been entered into a war hooping contest. They're going to lean and they're going to war hoop as best they can, and don't let us down. This is the heart of Lakota country. Do not let us down. Oh, they flipped it. Oh, geez. Okay, here we go. The ladies, you are going to Akisha. The fellas, you are going to lean to the best of your abilities. Hey, give them an example of an Akisha. Ooh, he even cupped it, boy. Okay. Sure.
All right, we'll start with the gentleman here. And the crowd, the audience will decide on the winner, okay? One for each.
Yeah, go. All right, we got a winner. Yeah. Lead.
Higher. Great. Come on, man.
Come on, higher.
My voice doesn't go out, right?
I heard you.
All right, let's go, Chad.
Leave.
This was kind of my game, and I thought it was supposed to be tomorrow, so I think I should pass it on.
Bring it down.
Jeez, I might call some monkey else here.
Great, going again, well,
There you go. Signature one.
Yeah, sure, because I'm real white.
You got it.
All right, crowd. First one, Joe. Alright, second, Ray. What about Chance? We got Lyle. Yeah, good. What about Trayton? Alright, what about Tyrese? Alright, second. Victoria. Okay, what about Renee? What about relative over here? Okay, what about Lynette?
It's tied up, bro. These two tied up, Yeah, the two ends.
And then you two guys.
Yeah, we have a tie. You guys are gonna arm wrestle it off. Yeah.
Alright, we'll start with you ladies.
Okay, wait. The absolute best you have. Dig in deep to that inner spirit. Uh-huh. She felt that one.
Might wake up Crazy Horse.
She, Akisha, it's so loud, it fell out of your pocket.
Yeah.
That's a Akisha. All right, we'll start off with the girls first, ladies first. So Lynette. Then our final one. All right, there's the winner. Okay, now it's down to Lyle and Trayton.
Casey, you wanna play? Think what's up?
While you're on, tomorrow night. I don't know. All right, let's hear it for Lyle. All right, let's hear it for Trayton. All right, Trayton. That was just for fun. I'm sorry. We'll get you guys some prizes. We'll have them tomorrow. Well, we'll go ahead and get next to the presenter.
How about another round of applause for all the good sportsmanship over there? Yeah. I don't know what it is about our people. We got to turn everything into a competition all the time. Gee, we just have fun with it, too. But I don't know if I ever saw my Kushi shake her head when she leave. I don't know. You know, friends and relatives, like I said, it's been a very beautiful day here. We're grateful to have all of you here with us. Thank you again. You know, I want to read an introduction of our next presenter, Mr. Kyle White. In his presentation, Grounding Narrative Change in Research. Like we've been talking this entire day of changing the narrative, speaking our own stories. And so again, I want to say welcome, Mr. Kyle White, and to the relatives here. If I can please have your attention. Kyle was born and raised on the Pine Ridge Reservation. He serves as the Associate Director of Donor Stewardship and Foundation Relations for Illuminative, having previously served as the Director of Advancement for Thunder Valley Community Development Corporation on the Pine Ridge Reservation for 3 years. He also serves as a board member for the Oaye Luteo Kola Kichie. He received an AA degree in science, engineering, and math in 2021, and graduated with a BS in natural science in 2017 from OLC. He received a certificate in fundraising management from the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy at Indiana University in 2021. He will also
complete his master's in Lakota leadership and in management at the Ogallala Lakota College in June of 2023. That's amazing, my friend. And with that, please help me welcome Mr. Kyle White. Wow.
Everybody, can you hear me? Can you hear me okay? All right. Louder? All right, how's that? It's good to see everybody has a good competition. Appreciate Lynette. Had me looking around looking for our little dog Wahink base. Sound like him. I was looking around for him, thought he was here, but I guess not. It's just Lynette. Hey. Haumatakiapi, Chante Washtea, Napechu Zapulo, Kaiwai, Emachiapi, Nalako Charge, Tashunke, Wambli, Emachiapi, Na Inawayaki, Green Cedar Face White, Naha Te Wayaki, Blake White, Makpamni District, Amataha, Na Box Elder, South Dakota, Awaki. It's good to see you all here over those 2 days here for the Lakota Media Summit. I know it's something Thunder Valley has been working for a while, and it's really great to see everybody show out and come and support and learn, about how we can come together and work towards shifting perceptions and the narrative around the people here locally within our communities and the broader regional area and even into the national conversations. And so my presentation is really focused on grounding narrative change and research. That's really what the focus is for us at Illuminative. I work within our advancement department within philanthropy. Those of you who have had opportunity to work within that sector, it's an oppressive system. There's a lot of things that people don't know about our communities, and so it's always a challenge to educate our allies and those who want to support indigenous causes. And as a part of the advancement too, we're also helping to form the strategies and the different ways that we develop our programming for the work that we do. So we are Illuminative. We're a Native woman-led racial and social justice organization. Our mission statement is to build power for Native peoples by amplifying contemporary Native voices, stories, and issues to advance the justice, equity, and self-determination. And through that mission, we hope to accomplish and we envision a future where the self-determination and sovereignty of Native peoples is respected and supported, where our children see themselves reflected in the world around them, and where Native peoples author and control our own narrative. It's really important, for us to be able to see ourselves, in the world around us. We have, our indigenous worldviews, and when we come up against mainstream media and things that we see being put out in Hollywood and in the mainstream, it's not reflective of who we are and what we see and what we know, and that can have some detrimental effects. So before we get into more of the research stuff, just really want to be able to touch on what are narratives and what is narrative change? Um, and this is coming out of our research, Reclaim Native Truth. Um, and so we identify narratives as broadly accepted and deeply rooted stories that inform the people, that inform how people receive the world and other people. Um, and so narratives, they act like a filter, um, and people will ignore information that doesn't fit into their own narrative, um, or their own story about the world. And so uh, narratives are created and they're reinforced by the dominant culture. The master colonial narratives, manifest destiny. All of these narratives that were created at the beginning of colonial history and their first contact with our indigenous ancestors. Um, and so, we have uh, a huge task, ahead of us to be able to move something, that big and something that deeply rooted um, in America. Um, and so narrative change is it's an intentional effort to replace those existing narratives with something new. Um, and those new things come in and they help shift our attitudes and our behaviors, practices, systems, and eventually the policies. And looking at those things, it's gonna take it's gonna take time. It's gonna take a consistent effort, by all of our people, all of our communities working together to be able to shift, attitudes and behaviors. Uh, the system, that we're forced to work within is something that, there's no end game. It's just a continual maze that we're forced to work within. We get one law change, there's another one that they put in our way. And so really working, at the individual self first to be able to help shift the way that a person thinks and the way that they behave, and then letting that perpetuate out, really similar to like how Thunder Valley approaches liberation with their long-term approaches. Um, and so some of the elements of communication, they are narrative change. They involve communication, um, how the stories are shaped, um, and who shapes them. Also in news media, social media, popular culture, and affects far more than social media. Shifting the dominant narrative away um, can help change the way that decision makers and influencers, are educated and selected, the way that our children are taught in the education system, and also the way that funding is distributed to our communities. Um, so, Reclaiming of Truth was a huge research project, the largest research project done by, for, and about Native peoples. It was led by EchoHawk Consulting, um, and they helped develop the strategy to conduct this study. And they wanted to focus on the dominant narratives about Native people and how they're perpetuated and ways that we can change them. And so that study was produced and published in 2018, and that's really what founded Illuminated. So what are some of the things that stand in our way? One of the biggest things that came out of that research is our invisibility. Um, so invisibility today it's really the modern form of racism against Native peoples, and it's one of the greatest threats to our own lives and our livelihoods. And with that invisibility, you know, we're not there, we're not seen. And so that allows non-natives, you know, to form their own opinions, and that creates a lot of the toxic stereotypes that you see in pop culture across our judicial system, um, within our own education system as well. And so, you know, through that erasure, you know, it's a it's an act that, you know, it's a powerful and dangerous weapon, you know, that white supremacy uses um, to continue to have their own master narratives perpetuated through all of the systems that we're forced to live within. Uh, some of the big findings of that is that 72% of Americans, they almost never encounter or seek out information about our people. Out of the 50 states, there's 27 states that don't even mention anything about Native people in K-12 curriculum. So there's a huge, there's a huge gap there for people to form their own stereotypes and opinions about us at an early age. You know, that's a real issue, you know, for us when children are learning these things and are learning these types of behaviors at a younger age. It makes it hard, you know, to correct some of those things. Another interesting one is the Native American characters. Out of all of the TV and film that's been produced since Hollywood was created, you know, 0.04% includes Native Americans, you know, in those. 95% of the images that come up in the first 100 images when people search Native American are you know, from the 19th century, and so they're seeing this romanticized imagery of us, of our ancestors, you know, in the traditional dress that we had during that time period. And so they're seeing these images and they don't see us wearing those things. So, okay, so you're not Native, you know, they equate that to us, you know, being Native based off of if we're wearing headdresses and buckskin. And so through that, you know, through that romanticization, they hold those stereotypes simultaneously. So some of the things are, you know, there's a majority of Native Americans believe that we receive free stuff, you know, but we also have tons of money from casinos. We're also a spiritual people. We're connected to the earth, these noble savages, as they call us in the Declaration of Independence. But we're also lazy and we're drunks, and we live in poverty, you know. And so it's hard, you know, to combat these types of things when we're not even, you know, being seen. And so that invisibility has consequences, and I'm sorry if it's a little bit hard to read, but so some of the consequences that come out of invisibility and those toxic misperceptions is that, you know, leaving omitting us from data that's collected, and that informs policy and the decision makers. You know, it deems us irrelevant, and that, negatively impacts our Native communities. It keeps our communities from having a seat at the table. And some of the civil rights leaders um, that were a part of the Reclaiming Native Truth study, they observed, that were notably absent from that, from a lot of the national conversations around race and diversity. It also perpetuates the government underinvestment in our communities and um, the native solutions that we know that we have. We have the solutions to our problems because we're there living in it every day, and so we know best how to start to fix some of those things. Um, but because of that, visibility, it provides uh, politicians, and policymakers an excuse, to ignore the poverty, um, all of the health issues that we have and the concerns for those things, the suicide, um, income equality, and those types of things. It gives them a way out. Um, and they're also members of Congress who were a part of this study too, and they did agree that the lack of representation and the information, um, it does negatively impact key decisions and how policy and legislation is created and passed. Uh, the last one is something that I'm really passionate about is the philanthropic side of our community, how we can use philanthropy to help solve the issues that we have. Uh, there's little to no philanthropic investment on the community. I think there was a research that was done by First Nations Development Institute that looked at that, and they reported that less than 0.5%, I think it was 0.35% of all philanthropic dollars go to Native communities. Overall, around 9% go to BIPOC communities. And you think about the number in 2021, there was over $427 billion that was given away by foundations, individuals, donor advised funds, those types of things. And I was doing the math one time and dividing it out, just by the federally recognized tribes, it's about $3 million. Severe, severe lack of funding and understanding for who we are. It also undermines the tribal sovereignty and self-determination of our people. A lot of people in the survey, believe that we can't be sovereign if we're reliant on U.S. government funds. There's no requirements in the judicial system for judges and things like that to be required to take tribal law as part of their study. And so, already, not having those real understandings of the importance of treaty and how that relates to our inherent sovereignty to operate in our own way is one of those negative consequences. One of the last points that I want to make too is on this last one, humanization and past characterizations. They harm our people, particularly our women and youth. And so with dehumanization, and due to the lack of our visibility in media, entertainment, and the schools. Around 34% of Americans believe that Native people don't even face discrimination. Um, there's an interesting research paper titled "Heteropatriarchy and the Three Pillars of White Supremacy." Um, it was published by Andrea Smith, and in one of the pillars is the pillar of genocide, and how that uh, is related to uh, Native peoples. Um, and one of the things that is inside that pillar is that Indian people, Native peoples, we always have to be vanishing. We always have to be vanishing and not present. Um, so that way, uh, the non-natives or the white supremacists are able to then justify um, the genocide that has occurred and the oppression that continues to occur today of our people in an act of performing and completing their narrative of manifest destiny. Um, and so through that mechanism, uh, non-natives become the inheritors of all that was indigenous, and so that really entitles them to appropriate our culture, appropriate our lifeways um, through this what they call the Indian wannabe phenomena. I think the newer term today is pretendians. Um, it's it's a dependent thing where it's focused on the physical and psychological removal of our people. Um, and so looking at some of those findings earlier, the Google searches were not there. We're not, in those things. So how do we move forward to take all this information, this boring research that nobody reads, nobody cares about because it's too long and full of advanced degree research jargon that nobody really understands. Um, it's that's one of our things is being able to uh, turn that research into usable content. Um, and so a lot of our theory of change is utilizing Reclaim a Native Truth as our roadmap. Um, and so to be able to change the narrative, we have to work together collectively. We have to be able to disrupt and interrupt the erasure of our people. We have to combat the stereotypes and replace them with more accurate and positive representations of Native peoples. And I think, for everybody, I think we're all, from the area, and we watch the news and stuff. Almost every single story that's run by the media has a negative storyline around it. And so how do we work with allies in the media, to be proactive in using their non-native platforms to support the narratives that we want to be able to portray and tell from our own point of view. We want to be able to educate and enlist the key audiences and institutions that are within American society as allies. We want to be able to bring those individuals in who understand the injustices that are occurring and want to be able to use uh, their white privilege to be able to amplify and also work with within their own people and their own race to start to move the needle on some of these really hot topics. And then lastly, we really work hard to increase representation in the media, pop culture, government, and other key sectors. And so we've been able to do that in a number of ways. And I'll get into that a little bit later. So being able to, change the story, we're able to change the future for our people, for our youth, being able to see themselves reflected, across media and other sectors. And I think a lot of the conversations, around that today, there's our people are doing it already, uh, um, and that they're not waiting to be invited to the table. They're creating our own table for ourselves. So being able to change the story, we touched on those things, being able to disrupt, amplify, re-educate, and build power to be able to author our own, and to be able to control our own stories. And so changing the perceptions and dismantling invisibility and the false narratives and their consequences, it's a process, but if we're able to work together and we have our allies, involved, in that process, we're able, to change that narrative, and the transformative change is something that is definitely possible. And so when Americans have clear, accurate views of the issues that we face, we can work together and build a world we're able to all thrive together. An interesting thing that came out of that study too was of the non-natives that were surveyed, about 78% wanted to learn more about our people when they were offered more accurate narratives. 72% of teachers also support changing curriculum within the schools to ensure that there's accurate Native history that's being taught within the school systems. I think we all know Christy Nome, has been, someone who's been a deterrent of that and really is stripping away, those types of things. And so pretty soon, South Dakota will be number 28 on that list of states that don't even include any type of Native American curriculum in their school system. So the importance of narrative change is that we have to be able to build out a narrative change infrastructure. And no one organization can achieve a narrative change. It requires a movement of many movements, a leaderful network across any country and among allied organizations who are incorporating narrative change as a tool to their organizing tool belt. And so a quote coming out of the RNT research found that we must create a strong chorus of many voices singing in harmony. When people, organizations, and movements start to use the new narrative in their unique work, the effect is one of a surround sound. Over time, the more positive, accurate, and forward-moving narrative becomes a story that they're used to hearing. There's so many issues across Indian country, uh, that are more broad topics that affect all of us in some way in our community, and being able to identify how those things directly impact our communities is important, uh, to be able to tell our truth, to tell from our point of view. Um, and when we can work together, in those key times. I think I heard, the Rick Santorum, having him fired from CNN. That was one of those, what we call a magic moment, where those types of things arise in the media, and then being able to rapidly respond together. We were involved with that. There were a lot of other organizations, that were involved, with that, being able to address CNN, the executives, and ultimately, having him, removed from the network, for all of his racist comments that he, would share on his show. So how do we even know, like, what affects our community, like, as a whole, across Indian country? And so we utilize the Indigenous Futures Survey. It's one of the largest surveys, conducted in Indian country. And it's it's community-driven research that helps us to push back on our eraser, and helps tell our own story. And so IFS, it was the first study that was conducted, for Indigenous peoples, and led by our people, and it was aimed at understanding the priority issues, and the needs of our people and their communities, across the United States. And so far, 2 studies have been conducted. The inaugural one in 2020, and then we just completed IFS 2.0, at the end of, beginning of this year. We completed that survey, and so now we have the findings, and all of that are now on our website now. But we've conducted that research with University of Michigan, the Rice Center, Native Organizers Alliance. They're an organization that's focused on grassroots movement building, and so they train, grassroots people, youth, within various communities across Indian country, and arm them with the strategies to be able to organize, within the grassroots level. So it's all a part of building out that infrastructure that's going to be needed, to be able to come together and organize, in those big moments. And so it started to fill in the gaps that the RFT research had, and helped us understand what we need to be able to push back. And it also charts a path forward for Indian country, and it's aimed at learning from our people about our systematic challenges, the priorities, needs, and experiences. So out of the first one, being able to use research to empower our people, motivating Indigenous people to vote, and to continue advocating for the needs and priorities of our communities. That's a huge, issue for a lot of people in our community, is, their distrust within the government. A lot of people, don't vote. They don't want to vote. That's some of the findings that came out of the IFS 2.0, is that the millennials and the Gen Zers, they're not going to vote. So how do we focus on targeting that specific generation to shift their attitudes around that? And I always talk about the importance of voting. Uh, we know that these systems take time to move, but we need our people, inside those systems to hold space. Red Dom was here earlier, this morning talking, and, it's really, our job, as community to support those individuals who go into those arenas and advocate for our people. And, when we're able to all come together, look at what's been able to happen with the confirmation of Secretary Deb Haaland, bringing the attention to the MMIW movement, releasing the, the boarding schools report. Those are all things that are needed to start to shift the needle, but it's still going to continue to take time, and so that's why we need to continue to, support our relatives in those spaces. So in 2020, some of the important ones were quality healthcare, improving our mental health. It's right around the time of COVID, caring for tribal elders, addressing violence against our women, children, and girls, and also our LGBTQ2S plus relatives, and caring for our lands and our water. And so in our issue 2, it covers one of the disproportionate impacts of COVID-19 on our communities, and one of growing political engagement and power building. So some of the top issues that came out of that survey, top priorities: climate change and racism were the top 2 priorities that Indian country feels that are important to addressing together. Of course, our healthcare system, the economy and the cost of living, the inflation is affecting a lot of those things, and especially in our communities, it's hard. It's hard when a lot of our people live below the federal poverty line. And then also, the COVID-19 pandemic that continues to affect our communities and the way that we're able to gather and communicate with each other. And as I mentioned, some of the issues around voting are the barriers. Young people, they're just discouraged and they're not motivated to vote. And even those living on reservation, they face a ton of challenges and barriers to voting. So how are ways that we can support, our community to be able to make it to the polling places and vote. One of the another interesting thing that came out of the IFS 2.0 was that around 64% of our community believe that the last presidential election was fair, and so that's concerning as well. Like, why are our communities believing the Trumpsters and that the election was stolen? Misinformation and disinformation, it's another one of the big things that are affecting movements. It's I think it's been identified as one of the new tactics that organizations will use to stop or hinder movements. And so how do we address those types of things? What types of things do we have in place that will address misinformation that's coming into the community? How do we combat those things? Being able to respond rapidly when those types of informations come in is something that, is part of that infrastructure piece, for our community. Um, and I think that kind of ends it. I was gonna do, a little mini workshop, but I think it took up all the time with the Lee Lee and the Keisha contest. Uh, but I wanted to, leave you all with this R&T narrative framework. Um, is something that can be used, and tailored specifically, to your organization or to your community to be able to tell more accurate portrayals. You know, what are the problems that are going on? Being able to have, that opening problem statement that uh, leads into the narrative. Um, the values, including the values in the community and those things that we hold as Native people. It's important to share those types of values because there's others who share those types of values as well. Our non-Native allies who are going to be, reading these types of things. So they start to see, they start to see ourselves more, being able to share our history. I know it's one that is it's almost like beating a dead horse for us. It's like we go into these important meetings, and every single meeting that we go into, it's always we have to tell the history of the papal bulls that started the entire movement all the way, to where we are today, in like 5 minutes. And it's a challenge, but it's something that we can continually have to do. We have to continually tell the history, the true history of what has happened, and talking about our visibility is important. We're no longer living the way that our ancestors did, as much as I wish that we could go back to those ways. Um, it's a challenge, to fully live in harmony and the way that our ancestors did. Um, but we have those manifestations, and we have our life ways and all those things that our ancestors fought, sacrificed for. We still have those things today, you know. So how do we show up, as modern Native people, Indigenous people, so that way people know, okay, he's Native, or there's they start to see us, they start to see us as a person, not just someone who is, oh, I like everybody, it don't matter, who they are, or what color they are, because in the end, that's still a form of dehumanization, because you fail to see me as a Native American man, uh, so, and, it's just something that is used to insulate, the white fragility that a lot of American people hold. Um, and lastly, making sure that we have a call to action, making sure that it's clear and concise, whatever that call to action is, get out and vote, get vaccinated, those types of big things, whatever that call to action is that you have for your community, making sure that you include that within your storytelling is always going to be important. And so, our IFS findings, they can be woven with R&T insights to shift the non-Native attitudes and behaviors with Native community-driven data about the issues that matter most to us. And those things together combined, they illuminate the pathways to create social and policy change to address those issues of primary importance to our people. So how do we use IFS? Um, so to date, we've trained 24 Native artists in the IFS findings and R&T. We immerse them in that to be able to amplify Native issues and experiences and engage and support among the new mass audiences that we're creating now. Um, and so we really see um, we really see our Native artists and storytellers, as the leaders and the visionaries, for our future. So we really work hard to support them, um, whether it's providing a living wage to produce a piece of content, or digital artists, graphic designers, um, musicians. All of our artists are important to being able to take that content and create something beautiful that can start to shift people's attitudes, the way that they think about things. You know, art's a beautiful thing that we have as a tool to use. Um, we used it with being able to finally get the long fight of getting the Washington football team name changed. Um, that was a fight that began, I think it was in the late 80s or early 90s, and so, all this work, it's really, us continuing to stand on the shoulders of our ancestors and all those who helped pave the way, to get us to this point today. And so it's always important for us to remember, those individuals who have been, within those movements and who've sacrificed. Um, Working with our community on For the Love of Our People campaign, being able to work with our communities on the COVID-19 hesitancy around the vaccination. we, we use that data to develop out the campaign and the different assets and the strategies that we use to get people to get out and get vaccinated. But we found that isn't enough. There wasn't a lot of people. It wasn't really translating into people becoming vaccinated. So we had to shift the way that we work towards achieving that goal, and so we have to then employ community grants, being able to allow the communities to work in their own way to provide accurate information and awareness around the importance of the vaccination. And that's something that will that's important when you're implementing different programs and things, that being able to assess where we're at and how things are going, and being able to change up the strategies is so important. And a couple other ones, we had the Red Road to DC. So there was a totem pole, and it's one of the oldest forms of storytelling for coastal people in the Pacific Northwest. And it was a totem pole that was carved by some carvers from the Lummi Nation, and was taken from there, and they went around to a number of different sacred sites on their way to DC to raise awareness, of the importance of protecting land and water and those natural resources from the extractive industry, and to really remind at the time, Joe Biden, the presidential candidate, always promised that he would protect Bears Ears after Trump, opened those lands up um, to extraction. And so that was another successful campaign that happened, where he did fulfill that promise, and he actually expanded, he expanded the area of protection for that Bears Ears sacred site. And then I talked about this earlier too, getting Deb Holland confirmed as the first Native Secretary of the Interior. And that, again, that's another narrative that we could use for the community as an example, of how voter registration and then getting to the polls is important, to address that voter hesitancy that our younger relatives are having, and to help them see the importance of long-term thought and commitment to help keep these individuals and our relatives in these systems. And with that, that's it. I was gonna go into the breakout session, but yeah, all of our resources and the research we have the Reclaim Native Truth Action Guide. It's more of an annotated research that has the framework there. We also have the full research report on our website. We just have a whole list of resources available for people to use. And one of the things that I didn't include, is that there is a section in that research of how our non-Native allies can show up and support our movements and our causes. Because I didn't know, I think there's a lot of allies here, but I see a few, and I appreciate you guys for coming and showing interest. And I hope that you do take away some good positive messages from these 2 day session, the 2 day session that we have, and that you find ways to be able to use some of those things in your own work, as you work towards whatever it is that you do as professionals. Thank you. Yeah, we go on to, let's see if I'm connected to the internet. We go on to Illuminatives, illuminatives.org. There's the it's not even on there. There's a resource tab at the top of our homepage. You click on that, and then there's another section of the different types of research and reports that we have. And so the R&T, the guide, it's under the guide section, the action guide. Yeah, and it's called Illuminative Insights and Action Guide. It's a downloadable PDF. I hope I answered everybody's question that they had in their minds as I was going through everything. Did I do it? I must have done it. All right. You all have a good evening. You guys have
You know, one more round of applause here for Mr. Kyle White. You know, sir, I thank you for everything you do, your insight, your knowledge, and especially the work you do and what you stand for. We say thank you to you. And to all our presenters as well, we say, Wopida, Unkenicha, pero at this time, friends and relatives, you know, that is it for presenters for day one. How about a round of applause for the Lakota Media Summit? And now we are officially taking a small break, as it is it's about 4:40, so about 5 o'clock, we're gonna have dinner. There's gonna be some live performances, some entertainment, things like that. So friends and relatives, please feel free to move about, to mingle, to walk around, check out the vendors, maybe have a chundi or a chunli, right? That's how we say it here, right? I have to always remind myself, I come here speaking with a D sometimes, but nonetheless, you know, we are officially getting ready for dinner, and then we will be welcoming Basil and Tiana Spotted Thunder with us here this evening. So again, friends and relatives, thank you for being here, and feel free to ask any questions anytime to anyone, you know, so.
Oh, the backdrop, the photo area.
Oh. Again, you know, the selfie curtain, that's what I'm calling, you know, if it's called that. The selfie curtain is over here. Take a picture, hashtag it, tag somebody. And again, invite all your friends and relatives. Come on over here to eat at 5 p.m. and we're gonna rock and roll with Tiana and Basil.